Picture a student who studies hard for every exam but keeps getting poor grades. After enough disappointments, she stops putting in effort altogether. Not because she's lazy or incapable, but because she feels her actions no longer matter. This pattern of giving up after repeated setbacks is known as learned helplessness. The term comes from psychology experiments in the 1960s by Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer. They studied how animals responded to stress and found something unexpected. In their tests, dogs were exposed to mild shocks. Some could stop the shocks by pressing a lever, while others had no control at all. Later, when placed in a new environment where escape was possible, the dogs that once had no control didn't even try. They simply lay down, as if resigned to the idea that nothing they did would change the outcome. That resignation, choosing not to act even when solutions exist, is at the heart of learned helplessness. It shows how past experiences of failure can reshape expectations of the future. If attempts to escape, succeed, or improve repeatedly fail, the brain starts to believe that effort is pointless. Humans are just as vulnerable to this response. Someone who applies for jobs over and over without success may eventually stop applying, convinced they'll be rejected no matter what. A person in a toxic relationship may stay, thinking there's no way out. A student who repeatedly struggles in math may decide, "I'm just not a math person," and stop trying altogether. Learned helplessness doesn't mean actual helplessness, it's a belief about helplessness. That distinction matters. Often, the resources, skills, or opportunities are there, but the person doesn't reach for them because past failures have trained them not to. The consequences can be serious. Learned helplessness is closely linked to depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. It drains motivation, narrows problem-solving, and can even affect physical health. People under its grip may feel stuck in cycles of inactivity, convinced their efforts won't matter, even when change is possible. But why does this happen? At a neurological level, repeated failure conditions the brain to expect negative outcomes. The stress response becomes chronic, and over time, the brain learns to conserve energy by not trying. It's like an internal defense mechanism. Don't waste effort, nothing will change. Unfortunately, this protective instinct often backfires, trapping people in situations where action could actually improve their lives. You can see the imprint of learned helplessness in everyday situations. In classrooms, students who experience repeated difficulty may disengage, not because they lack ability but because they've been convinced their ability doesn't matter. In workplaces, employees under rigid or controlling managers may stop offering ideas, believing their voice has no impact. In society at large, groups who face systemic barriers can internalize a sense of powerlessness that takes generations to unlearn. Yet the story doesn't end there. Psychologists also found ways to counter learned helplessness. Later experiments showed that if animals were trained to succeed in small steps, like learning they could escape by moving to another area, they regained motivation. In humans, this translates to building a sense of control. Small wins, gradual progress, and achievable goals remind the brain that effort does make a difference. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, often addresses learned helplessness by challenging the belief that outcomes are fixed. For example, someone might reframe a failure not as proof of incompetence but as feedback for trying again differently. Over time, these shifts restore a sense of agency. Supportive environments matter too. Encouragement, recognition, and opportunities for autonomy can counteract feelings of helplessness. When people feel their actions are acknowledged and their voices are heard, they're more likely to re-engage. There's also a personal side to overcoming it. Self-awareness is key. Recognizing when you've stopped trying because of past disappointments is the first step. From there, experimenting with small actions like applying for one more job, speaking up once in a meeting, or tackling one small problem can start to rebuild confidence. Success doesn't have to be dramatic, even small victories chip away at helplessness. Learned helplessness also carries an important lesson about empathy. When we see someone not trying, it's tempting to label them as lazy or unmotivated. But often, their behavior is the result of invisible battles with repeated failure and disappointment. Understanding this makes us more compassionate teachers, leaders, friends, and family members. Fundamentally, learned helplessness is a story the brain tells itself. My actions don't matter. Breaking free means rewriting that story with new experiences, reminders of past resilience, and encouragement that effort is never wasted. Life is full of setbacks, but setbacks don't have to define the future. While failure can teach us caution, it doesn't have to teach us resignation. Each attempt holds the possibility of change, and every step forward, no matter how small, reinforces the truth that we are never as powerless as we sometimes believe.